Hey, football fans and Atlanta Falcons fans. It's the Atlanta Sports Unlimited Fantasy Football Show with Tom Pollen. I'm Dave Holcomb, our producer behind the scenes, Chris Smitherman, here for another Saturday, early afternoon on the East Coast, Saturday morning everywhere else in the United States, talking some football. Quarterbacks, Tom. That's been the name of the game for the last few weeks. We got more quarterback news today. And we'll take, I think, a little bit look maybe at the other skill positions at for your fantasy team. Couple pieces of news: Deshaun Jackson leaving the Eagles. Yep. Maybe we can talk a little bit about Vincent Jackson, who unfortunately passed away at a very young age this past week. I believe that happened. So. But yeah, I mean, the news continues to be dominated by quarterbacks. And by the way, we want to make you a part of the show. Send us a comment. We can read it on air. We had a lot of great interaction last week. We want some more.
Oh, yeah, we did. That was a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also reach us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. So,
and you can also, well, I haven't posted anything in a while, but you can read my blog at WordPress. You look at Football A to Z, and a lot of my past work is up. And I'm going to be putting up fresh content pretty soon.
Okay, good. Yes, I always like looking for your blog posts. You had a great one about the Hall of Fame the other week. So we're looking for more content there.
Yeah, it's got caught up in a lot of work the last couple of days. All this real world stuff just gets in the way of all the fun stuff. And
it does. Unfortunately, yeah.
It's unfortunate how that happens, damn that real world. But yeah, I'm going to be hitting up some content pretty soon.
Before we get rolling, if our audience can indulge me for a little bit, Tom and I are huge movie fans. And Chris, I haven't talked to you about movies, I don't think. I don't know how big are you a big movie fan, Chris?
Huge movie buff. I'll come on for this if we're talking about movies for sure. I can talk about those for days.
So I've been watching a lot of movies on, I always get the abbreviation wrong, TMC, right? Or is it TCM?
TCM.
TCM.
The movie channel, yeah.
So
classic movies.
Been going through the guide and just kind of recording movies that I find interesting on TCM. Guess what's on today, Tom?
I haven't looked at today's schedule yet.
The Guns of Navarone.
Oh, beauty. Oh, that's a good one.
Shoot, I've actually never seen it.
Never seen it? Oh,
either,
watch
Chris.
it.
And Tom has been telling me for how long have you been telling me to watch this movie? 5 years?
Oh, yeah, about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Guns of Navarone.
If you get
David Niven, Gregory Peck, Anthony Quinn, just full of stars, great action, a lot of fun. That's a fun movie.
It's from the early 60s, Chris, and I believe it's on at three something on TCM. So check it out. I'm gonna record it and probably watch it later.
Okay, I might have to do the same. I was like, hopefully I'll be back by 3.
But TCM does a lot of great stuff. I mean, they have their Silent Sunday Nights, which I always like. They run a lot of the old silent movies. Noir Alley, which is a lot of fun. All those gritty, B movies from the 30s and 40s and detective movies and all that fun stuff. And just, there's movies that come on that channel that I watch, regularly whenever they come on. That's just, it's a fantastic channel. If you're really into old movies, and I think there are a lot of old movies, they may not have had the effects, may not have had the, there's some old science fiction movies that are pretty good, may not have had the effects, but, come on, that are pretty good. And, they do a good job. I really enjoy that channel.
I do too. Yeah. And as I said, I've been just kind of going through the guide weeks out and just hit record on anything I find interesting. Last night I watched The Eagles Who Dare, I think it was what it was called. Eagles. It was a war movie with Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton. Yeah.
Richard Burton. Yep.
Where Eagles Dare.
Where Eagles Dare.
Yes.
It was
That's
a very
good one too.
it was a very complicated plot, but
Yep.
I liked it. It was good. But after that, I watched The China Syndrome from 1979.
Oh yeah, right.
Loved that. Thought it was great.
Yeah, it really was. I've watched that too. Yeah, they're classic movies. They're starting to get further into our range. Maybe not your range, but my range of when I was a little bit younger. Let's see. I think yesterday they showed Thelma and Louise, so that's a fairly recent movie. Apparently, Turner has declared it a classic, and are now showing it. So
I recently watched that, not on TCM, but I watched it on Hulu.
okay.
And I texted my mom and said, "This looks really old, and I can't believe it looks so old. It's 1991." And she said, "Well, you are old. I was born in 1990." So, I didn't appreciate that, Mom. I think she's watching. So, and another 90s movie on TCM.
I like that. Go Mom.
Yeah. Okay. Bugsy from the same year, 1991. I saw Bugsy on TCM over the summer. That's a fairly newer movie for TCM as well.
Yeah, it is. So they're getting up there. They're moving slowly into your era. I mean, it's they still concentrate on a lot of 30s and 40s, but hey, they're getting there.
Yeah, more 80s and 90s.
I don't have streaming services like you youngins do. I can't afford streaming services, so it's I don't get to watch all those movies right away when they come out, unfortunately. And
so, we're thinking about dropping cable, which unfortunately would mean we don't get TCM anymore, which would be a shame. But we my wife and I, we get HBO Max, we get the Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus. It's just like, it's so much that, and I get sports through the NHL package. I get the MLB package. So I don't watch, the only really cable channel I watch is TCM, and I've watched CNN because of the pandemic the last year.
Right.
But those two things and the Atlanta Falcons going full circle, coming back to football, that was another reason why I have cable. But I'm thinking about just dropping it and going with the streaming services.
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth, we are here too. But I don't have streaming services, so I'd have to replace it with a couple of streaming services. But other than that, there's really not much on cable that I watch except for TCM. I watch some of the things on Comedy Central, and I'm a very boring guy, I guess. I don't know. I'm not into reality shows and all that other fun stuff that they like to show.
Yeah, well, I'm not either. And cable has lived for a while, continue to get people like us, right, because of the sports. But it seems like DirecTV has been offering their streaming service for a few years now, but the MLB TV, NHL TV, I think they're just growing in popularity. And now there's the Peacock is coming out, where they're going to have sports on Peacock, and Paramount Plus is coming out, where I think they're going to have live CBS access, which means you could watch CBS games on there. So I don't know. It's an interesting time for the streaming services and cable, for sure. It's been that way for a while, but even more so.
I get NFL Game Pass. I can watch every game on the computer. It's I could still watch games even if I didn't have a Sunday ticket
on demand. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be the way I go next year, unless I have to watch the Falcons live. I have Game Pass too, so I'll just watch. If there's a game I really want to watch, I'll watch it on replay.
Yeah. That's the thing. You get Sunday ticket, you get the channel with like 8 games showing simultaneously, and your eyes split into 8 different parts. But Sunday ticket's fun. I enjoy having it, but I have Game Pass on NFL.com, and you're not going to miss anything.
Are you a Red Zone fan?
Not as much, no. No,
No.
I would rather watch the games as they progress.
That doesn't
You know.
surprise me. You as a strategist, you want to see, the decision of whether or not to go for 4th and 1 or punt. You don't get that as much on red zone.
No, you really don't. No.
Yeah.
So
are you a red zone fan, Chris? Is Chris, you still with us? You like red zone?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry about that, gentlemen. Audio problems with the mic never cease to fail with technology. Honestly, I don't know too much about red zone.
Okay.
What'd you say?
Gonna watch your Bills instead of red zone.
Yeah. I watch the Bills. Honestly, I'm in Buffalo, but I'm not a Bills fan. I don't have the Bills hype.
Right, you're a Bengals fan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'm definitely a Bengals fan. But I have enjoyed. I'll tell you this: watching a Bills game, hanging out with people is a great experience. That is a great.
It's a great fan base. It's a fun fan base.
It's a fun fan base, but yeah, Bengals all day, Bengals Nation. Let's just see if Joe Burrow can lead us to victory. I know I've had a lot of great conversations with Bills fans about how the Bengals are a couple years behind. kind of what they're at now. I mean, they had to tone up Josh Allen. They had to get him together, go through some seasons, become a better leader, and look what happened to him. So I'm hoping that Joe can do the same with the Bengals.
Well, I'll tell you, I went on record early last year, early in the season. I like Joe Burrow. I like what he does. I like his poise on the field. I really like Joe Burrow, and I think once they get a line in place in front of him, sky's the limit for that guy.
Yeah, no, I look. Let's hope. Let's hope the sky's the limits and nothing happens both on the field and off the field to stop him from going somewhere.
Right.
But
get him healthy after the injury.
Yeah, no, for sure. But as I hop off here, I definitely want to give Mike a shout out. Thank you for
Hey, there's Mike.
Good to see you, Mike.
Yeah.
Gary's here as well. Gary says that he loves red zone. It's the greatest invention, one of the greatest inventions of this decade. There it
is. All right. That biped, that even ahead of any vaccine or any space exploration. But yeah, we're gonna put red zone. No, I'm kidding, Gary. I'm teasing. But no. I as I say, I like to watch the games as they progress, and once a team does get down near the goal line, I'll concentrate on that game. But I want to see all the games as they're going on. I want to see how the teams are playing.
Well, red zone's been around since what, like 2004, 2005. So it's
something like that. Yeah, it's been around a while.
It's not in the same decade as the COVID vaccine. We don't have to compare the two.
Oh, good. There. Okay, fine. That works out good.
It's up there with the iPod, I guess. I don't know. What was invented in 2005?
I don't know. I was alive back then, but I can't remember. So,
yeah.
I don't remember that stuff. It's what they say. They always said if you grew up if you can remember the 1960s, if you grew up in the 1960s and can remember it, then you didn't grow up in the 1960s because you were basically zonked out on all those psychedelics and all that fun stuff.
Right.
I can't remember what happened in 2000. I was somewhere.
Mike's weighing in on red zone. It's great for fantasy, but I'm with you. I like to watch the full game as well. Yeah, I think that's very true, Mike. I always like to watch my Steelers first, of course, or if I got to cover a specific game. Falcons have been covering the last few years, but yeah, if I have no rooting interest for anyone else, I'll turn on red zone.
That old, okay. Oh no, I'm not telling anybody how old I am actually. So you get to guess on that one.
Yeah, we'll keep it a secret.
Thank you.
But let's talk some Carson Wentz now as we transition back to
football. Yes, let's get to some football.
So I guess let's kick it off by asking you a personal question. I would assume I know the answer to this. Are you happy that Carson Wentz went to Indianapolis instead of Chicago? It seemed like those were the two possible places, Chicago or Indianapolis. He ends up going to the Colts. I think it's the best situation for Wentz. I don't know. I don't necessarily going to say, I don't have a hot take to say that he's going to become a Pro Bowler again or whatever. But if he's going to get his career back on track, it's going to be in Indianapolis. I would assume as a Bears fan, you're kind of glad that Indianapolis outbid them. Is that where you are, or are you disappointed Chicago didn't land him?
To tell you the truth, the Bears were never a player for Carson Wentz. All right, let's start out right there. The Bears were never a player. Darrell Rovell came out after the trade was made and mentioned that the Bears never made an offer. This is how this whole thing played out. I'm going to go on a little rant here, so, okay. Go ahead. And
remember, we got to be out of here at 1.
Oh, that's right. Okay, small rant. The thing is, the Colts knew that they were the best spot for Wentz. They had Wentz's, offensive coordinator when he came into the league, Frank Reich.
Yeah. Right.
All right. The rest of the league knew that Carson Wentz was better off in Indianapolis than anywhere else. Okay. Yeah, but the Eagles knew that with only one bidder in the game, that they were looking at Matthew Stafford package. They wanted that Matthew Stafford package. They're like, where's ours? We want our guy's a first overall pick too. Why don't we get that kind of trade that the Lions got?
Sure, yeah, that's not how it works.
So what you do, and the thing is, you really got to pick your poison when it comes to what rumors you're listening to, and understand that most of the rumors you're hearing are false. The Bears were never going to give up their number one this year, number one next year, and Tariq Cohen for Carson Wentz. I wouldn't even be surprised if Philadelphia was the source of that rumor. Somebody low level put it out there, got it out to one of these blog sites. The thing is, the media environment has changed so much that everybody wants to be an insider. Even if you even with these other sites like FanSided or sites like that, Bleacher Report, everybody wants to be that insider, and they want to say, I broke this.
Yeah.
And the problem is there was nothing to break. The Eagles were trying to up the game for Carson Wentz. They wanted to up the price. They wanted to see if they could get the Colts to believe that there was somebody else interested. And since the Bears desperately need a quarterback, the Bears were the team that they put out there. The Bears never had any interest in Carson Wentz. This was all a matter of the Eagles trying to get the Colts to sweeten the pot. Colts would not do it. And the Colts never gave up more than what they first offered. The Colts were willing. The Colts wanted Wentz. Let's put it that way, because Frank Reich wanted Wentz.
Right.
But
they obviously need a quarterback.
Yeah. And Reich has worked with Wentz, but Wentz is damaged goods. Where is Wentz going to do? What location is best for Wentz to actually maybe get him back to that point where he was in his first couple of years? Yeah. And that's Indianapolis. That's with his offensive coordinator, the guy who brought him in the league. This if anybody knows how to fix Carson Wentz, it's Frank Reich. So, and the Bears were just thrown in there as a team that, as I say, Philadelphia is just trying to up the price. It was never going to happen. He was never going to come to the Bears. And I said that on Twitter a few times. You really have to take your rumors with a grain of salt these days, because everybody is trying to be that insider, and you've got to think logically about it. And everybody knew Wentz wanted to go to the Colts. The Colts wanted Wentz. The Bears didn't want Wentz. Where was he going to go? He was going to go to Indianapolis.
We got a comment from Mike. That's so true here in Denver. We keep fed the sports book are saying that the Broncos are the leaders to trade for Watson. Last I looked, books are not a reliable source reporting organization. It's very true. They're not.
That's very true. You know, sports books are trying to drive up bets on different teams. You know, if they can get some people to say that the Broncos are a player for Watson and put money on that proposition, you know, it's good for the sports books. Sports books aren't stupid. I mean, you know,
they're very small.
Only one person has ever gone out of business owning a casino. So I mean, I won't go there. But but yeah, if they can get somebody to believe it and put money down, you know, it's money in their pocket. So
the Wentz situation was interesting because I always say you don't want to be, and sometimes it's inevitable, but you don't want to be in a situation where the player you're trying to trade is more valuable to you than anyone else, because you're going to feel like you're not getting back what you should for that player in a trade, just because he's more valuable to your franchise, whether it's the position he plays or for emotional reasons, he's tied to your city. And you're like, okay, I want to get a good package for this franchise player before shipping him out of Philadelphia. But if you have that attitude, I mean, no one has that emotional tie like you do for that player. It was kind of the opposite with this situation, because the Carson Wentz wasn't particularly valuable to the Eagles, and he wasn't particularly valuable to anyone except Indianapolis because of the unusual fact that they have his former offensive coordinator.
There was a relationship, sure. And what you're saying actually applies directly to the Matthew Stafford trade. That, you know, you had a player with an emotional attachment to Detroit, and, you know, that what you just said applies. That's why Detroit was able to get the package for Matthew Stafford. So it's, you know, I wish Carson Wentz well. As I say, I don't know how he's broken. I don't know if there's still injury problems. Because he had that back problem that kept him out a couple of years ago. Or even last year, was it?
I think he's had multiple back problems. Didn't he miss the end of 2018 because of a back issue? And then he missed the end of the playoff game in 2019, January 2020, because of a back injury. Josh McCown finished the game. Yeah.
So, you know, is it the injury? Is it the injury that's the problem, or is it, you know, kind of like the same situation with Jared Goff, where, you know, a couple of years later they fall off the table and you don't know, and they're the same quarterback class, and the same thing happened to both. Made a big splash, came into the league, looked like they were the future for their franchises, and signed big extensions 3 years into their career and fell off the table. So, you know, it's difficult to say that, you know, if anybody can fix Carson Wentz, it's going to be Frank Reich. So we'll see what happens there. I'm going to be very interested in seeing how that progresses through camp, through OTAs, and as we move forward.
Absolutely. I 100% agree that if Wentz doesn't figure it out in Indianapolis, his career is probably over. At least
he's done.
He's done. Yeah.
Right. He's unsalvageable. The thing is, everybody thinks they can fix a quarterback. Everybody thinks they can fix a quarterback. You know, even if you discount the Carson Wentz thing, you know, with his relationship with Frank Reich, a lot of these quarterbacks that maybe failed with their first teams and are going on to their second teams, kind of like, you know, Mitch Trubisky, you know, maybe Jameis Winston. Everybody think, you know, they had rough starts, problems. But they're going to get another chance because everybody thinks that I can fix him. I know what's wrong, but there's 32 defensive coordinators in the league say, yeah, we know what's broken with him. We'll see if you can fix him.
Right. So, you always want to blame the franchise that brought him up, that he was in a bad culture. He was in a bad under a bad coach or whatever. Sam Darnold is another one that comes to mind, the former high pick, and hasn't been in the league all that long. So you start thinking, I mean, that was a name that's been floated around with the Steelers. I think that was kind of started last year with Juju Smith-Schuster last fall, whether or not he would like to see Sam Darnold come to Pittsburgh as a reclamation project. So then you start thinking about it as a Steeler fan after Ben retires. You're like, maybe they can fix Sam Darnold. But you're right. It's kind of like there's a reason why he's broken, right?
Yeah. Most of the time, they'll show you flashes. But if you look at the flashes, they're against teams that are in the bottom of the league, their conferences. Mitch Trubisky had 3 great games last year at the last half of the season. 3 great games against 3 of the worst teams in the NFL. And then, came up against the Packers, got clobbered, came up against the Saints, couldn't move the ball, in the playoffs. And you don't find any more Trubisky backers on Twitter anymore among Bears fans. Everybody was like, Mitch has finally caught on. Mitch has learned. Mitch is there. And then all of a sudden, Mitch dropped a couple. And now all of a sudden it's, Trubisky, get rid of him. Trubisky's, let him be a free agent. We'll move on from Trubisky. So
circling it back to red zone, I think that is one of the negatives of red zone. You see those flashes in some of these quarterbacks and you say, he can do it.
Right.
Every quarterback that's in the NFL can do it. That's why they're in the NFL.
Right.
It's about being consistent, and it's about doing it more often than not, obviously. So, and that's game to game, and that's also play to play. You've seen lots of quarterbacks, maybe not lots, but some quarterbacks have great performances, have 30 great throws, and throw 3 interceptions. But that's not a good game.
Right. It's not. It's you're turning the ball over. You're giving the opponent short fields. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. And when you're on red zone and you see, Trubisky's looks really good, or to bring it back to our friend Mike, somebody that I think has shown a lot of flashes is Drew Lock. Drew Lock has shown that, I mean, he's got a lot of potential, but the consistency is not there at all. And that's why you're wondering whether or not the Broncos move on from Drew Lock.
That's amazing. They're run by a Hall of Fame quarterback, but they've never actually been able to find a quarterback on the field.
Other than Peyton Manning, which was obvious to pick up.
Yeah, but I mean, that was kind of obvious. So, but that's Drew Lock is a great example. You got to look at the overall body of work, and the overall body of work says somebody like Trubisky, he can't read defenses. He's not accurate. He's accurate when he's on the run, but you can't always put him on the run because defensive coordinators are going to figure that out.
Yeah.
As I keep saying, defensive coordinators aren't stupid. They get 3 or 4 games of tape on a guy, and that's it. That's all you're going to get. They will figure you out very quickly and find out what you like to do, find out what you can't do, and they will make those adjustments. It's just the way it is.
We talked about last week why it's unlikely that Matt Ryan gets shipped out of Atlanta. It's because of the big dead money that the Falcons would have to take in order to ship him out. That was of no consolation to the Eagles. We have another comment here from Mike. This reminds me of the Scott Mitchell rule. Your backup looks great, so he can start for my team. Never works out. That's very true.
Very true.
We'll come in and show.
Chicago, the most popular quarterback is the guy on the bench.
Yeah. That's true in a lot of places, but yes.
Yeah.
Particularly Chicago.
Chicago hasn't seen a Hall of Fame quarterbacks and Sid Luckman. So I mean, we haven't. The Chicago Bears fans haven't seen much out of a quarterback that they can. It's
Feel
like
good
they
about.
almost can't recognize a really good quarterback when they see one.
This is funny. But I was saying with Carson Wentz, so the Eagles are going to eat $33.8 million in 2021 towards their salary cap to get rid of Carson Wentz. His contract extension that they signed him to more than a year ago, it doesn't kick in until this March, this season. 4 years, $128 million deal, that is. The Colts are going to pick up most of it, and the Eagles are going to just bite the bullet for 2021, probably not be very competitive with the salary cap going down and so much dead money going towards a player not on the roster. I would imagine it's going to be tough for the Eagles to rebuild on the fly towards getting back to the playoffs in 2021.
And that's the gamble you take when you sign. You think you're going to try and save some money by signing him to an extension now instead of waiting until his option year's over, and then you got to sign him to like Russell Wilson or one of these really big contracts that he's going to command. You're trying to save some cap room down the line because you can always renegotiate some of those long extensions too and make them more cap friendly as you go down as you get through the years. But yeah, that's the gamble you take when you try and sign one of these hot quarterbacks before their option years. It didn't work out for the Cowboys with Dak Prescott. They're going to pay through the nose for Dak Prescott because they didn't sign him to an extension. But
they did the opposite, right? They didn't sign him to
an extension. They didn't sign him, and he kept performing. But now you're going to have you've got Goff and you've got Wentz are two quarterbacks who are signed the big money deals before they had to be, and the Rams and the Eagles are going to pay for that in dead cap money. So
Mike is signing off, just saying bye to Mike. Thank you for all the comments. We'll see you next Saturday. That's very true, Tom. With Dak Prescott is an example of the opposite happening, where I don't know what the Cowboys were. I guess they just weren't convinced that Prescott was their franchise quarterback, and that backfired on them. Just like the Eagles thought Wentz was their franchise quarterback, signed him to maybe a more team-friendly deal, and that didn't work out.
No. And it's a crapshoot. I mean, you really don't know. The Bears made the right decision when they decided to decline Trubisky's option. That's why he's a free agent now. But it's a crapshoot because you don't know what you're actually getting. Is the quarterback going to keep improving, and you're going to save a little money down the line, or is he going to fall off the table and now you're stuck with a lot of dead cap room that is going to keep you from building in other positions. It's rough. It's not easy being an NFL general manager. It really isn't. It's
What do you make of the report that Doug Peterson and Wentz did not speak for weeks? Did you see that come out yesterday?
I didn't see that come out.
Okay.
Surprises me because, your offensive, Peterson is the more of an offensive mind with the Eagles. He was brought in to kind of help rebuild that offense. And if he's not talking to your starting quarterback, then you really got problems. It's not going to help anything. I don't know how that helps a situation when you got a struggling quarterback and you got a coach who is relying on that quarterback to execute his offense, but they're not talking. How does anything good come out of that for either player? Wentz isn't enhancing his value to the Eagles, and Peterson is kind of like saying, okay, we're going to move on. And but he's not doing anything to maybe, help reclaim Wentz as a valuable starting quarterback. It's childish to me that they would get into that kind of situation.
It didn't initially surprise me hearing that, but then reading about it, that there's no exact time frame for when they stopped talking to each other, at least not yet in the media. But Adam Schefter reported it was 8, 9, or 10 weeks, and that is more than when Wentz got benched. Wentz got benched, I believe it was after week 13. Right. So if they didn't talk after week 13, I would just say whatever. I'm not surprised. And he wasn't starting. He didn't play at all after week 13. It's not a huge deal for the team. But if it's longer than a month, then they weren't talking when he was the starting quarterback of the Eagles. Yeah. And that obviously is a huge issue.
Yeah, I would like to know when that took place, because I know Wentz reacted terribly when they put Jalen Hurts in. So I can see them not talking after Jalen Hurts went in as a quarterback.
Right.
Because I forget, in week 17, the Eagles went in. Hurts had a bad game. Wentz never actually saw the field. Wentz wasn't going to see the field.
I don't even think Wentz was active for that game because Nate Sudfeld played the second half.
That's it. I couldn't remember his name. He made that big of an impact on me. But so you knew by then that the relationship was gone. There was nothing there. But it would be interesting to hear if that took place before Wentz was benched.
Sounds like it was.
Because then what are you doing to yourself? What are you doing to your quarterback? Both guys have to sit down and say, what am I doing here? Why am I acting this way? I still got a team. I still have a team to quarterback. Peterson. I still have a team to coach. I still have a team that I owe our best effort to win. And, as I say, it's childish. Because, it was the NFC East. Everybody had a chance to win the NFC East.
Yeah.
So, I don't get it.
Both people lose some credibility for me, the quarterback and the coach in that situation. They're not talking, not communicating. You know what situation this reminds me of? Jeff Fisher with Vince Young. And we thought, I think I'd have to go back and look at the history book, whether or not Vince Young was traded first or if Jeff Fisher was fired first. But it sounded like they were going to pick, that the organization was going to pick one side, that it was a relationship that was not fixable. And then both were gone before the following year. And then as history unfolded, it turned out that neither person was particularly good at their job. And now it's kind of the same situation with Philadelphia. Initially, I thought they were going to keep Peterson and trade Wentz in December. That's what I would have said would happen. Right. Then week 17 happens, and Peterson is just, we all are up in arms over how that transpired. A couple weeks later, he's fired, and you bring in a coach that doesn't have a lot of experience. Seems like he's just going to do whatever the general manager wants, and it sounds like the general manager wanted to keep Wentz, and then they end up trading him. So it's just a hot mess right now with that organization.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is, and that's got to be put directly on the doorstep of Howie Roseman, the GM of the Eagles. That situation was just completely bungled. I don't know if Wentz and Jalen Hurts were ever going to get along in Philadelphia. But, you had a chance to actually fix that relationship with Wentz, but maybe Roseman didn't think Wentz was salvageable either. So, it's an interesting question. Unless you're actually, you're in the room and you know what's going on, you can speculate all you want, but they just got into this situation where there was no way Wentz. I think maybe Wentz's attitude when he was benched kind of damaged beyond repair his relationship with the Eagles. Maybe his relationship with his teammates too.
Maybe.
That might have been another thing to take into account, is that maybe his teammates did not look at it positively when Wentz threw a tantrum when Jalen Hurts was going on the field. He didn't go around screaming and throwing helmets and throwing equipment, but he basically said, "I'm going to go off in the corner and hold my breath until you make me starting quarterback again." It's I'm insulted. So it's possible Wentz lost credibility with his teammates too, and maybe that's why he ended up going.
Could have hurt his trade value too.
I think it definitely hurt his trade value. That's another reason why Frank Reich was the only one who was willing to take a chance on Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
So,
well, Wentz isn't the only one leaving Philly. Deshaun Jackson is as well. I almost called him Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Jackson is leaving Philadelphia for the second time, and I don't know if he's going to end up finding another team, and I'm not going to have an opinion on where he might land or whether he plays again or not. But this is a fantasy show, so I wanted to give a shout out to Jackson. If this is the last time we see him play, or at least the last time we see him play in Philadelphia, what a great career and contributor to fantasy owners for 12, 13 years now. And the ultimate boom bust guy, right? Has there ever been a better, probably wide receiver 2 boom or bust option on your roster than Deshaun Jackson, leading the league in yards per catch 4 different seasons, and not a ton of touchdowns, but when he scored, it was always a long touchdown.
It was a long touchdown. Yeah, he was a great deep threat, but if he wasn't getting free deep, then he wasn't doing much for you. That's the thing. He might have 2 or 3 great games where he would win you a fantasy week. But there's a couple of weeks when you're looking at his stats and you're like, "What are you doing to me? You're killing me here." I'll
always remember his rookie year. I think it was Monday Night Football, Eagles Cowboys, and he did Leon. He did the Leon Let, but there wasn't a player that knocked the ball out of his hands. He just dropped the ball before the goal line.
I know. He thought he had crossed the goal and he dropped the ball.
And I end up losing my fantasy game that week, I don't know, by a couple points, and he should have had a touchdown there.
Yes.
I believe he also had an interception in that game, if I'm remembering correctly. And I was so excited. Oh, Deshaun Jackson has the ball, and then he goes to throw. I'm like, oh, he's going to throw the ball. And he throws an interception. No, I just lost 2 points.
Right. It was crazy.
I'll remember that game for sure from his rookie season, and a lot of other games where he, as you said, he was a huge disappointment or was a giant, enormous shot in the arm for your fantasy lineup. Right.
You loved him, and he could win you a game almost single-handedly as long as the rest of your lineup met their averages. You had Deshaun Jackson who could win you a game, but man, he could lose you a game too. That was something. Let me ask you a question real quick before we get off the subject of Carson Wentz.
Yeah. Okay.
Does this move, Carson Wentz reteaming with Frank Reich, what does that do to his fantasy value moving forward?
That's a good question. I still view Wentz as a reclamation project. I don't think he's going to – I haven't begun ranking quarterbacks or anything like that for next season. Obviously, you have to see where all these names land, but I don't see him being a top 12 quarterback. So I think he's more of a – if he ends up becoming the starter and a viable fantasy option, I think he's probably more of a bye-week replacement or a long-term play. If you're in dynasty leagues and he's already on your roster, I wouldn't cut him or anything. I would try and hold on. I would hold on to him and hope that he figures it out and brings his value back up over the long term. 2021, I would err on the side of caution and use him as a backup.
Or maybe if he shows what he's doing and shows that maybe he's getting it again, he becomes your waiver wire pickup. Might be somebody you watch on the waiver wire.
I would say right now I would consider him like a late round flyer, where you draft you draft Josh Allen, or you draft maybe you draft Dak Prescott, a guy that's a little bit risky, but you're hoping comes back and is as good as he was in September last year, and then paired with Dak Prescott, you take Carson Wentz in the 17th, 18th round as kind of an insurance policy, someone that will contribute, doesn't have a high ceiling going into the season, but will contribute here and there. Prescott has the much higher ceiling, but maybe injury risk, and you don't know what you're getting off of the injury. I would pair Wentz as a late round guy with a quarterback like that.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. I wanted to ask you that because I saw a little speculation on that during the week. If his fantasy value actually increases as he goes along. So
yeah, I think it is probably going to be higher, or he has the potential to be better this year than he was in 2020. I mean, 2020 he hit rock bottom. So
right.
I think it's up everything from here. I think with Wentz.
Yeah, he has to be. So okay, that's worthwhile. So would you say, if depending on who Deshaun Jackson ends up with, I mean, is he still someone that works for you as a fantasy wide receiver? Or is he past his days as a wide receiver, fantasy wise and all?
Yeah, I think he's past his days. I mean, he's played 8 games in the last 2 years. You just can't rely on him. And he's a deep threat, as we've been talking about, and he's now 35 years old. So there's not too many good deep threats at 35. Now, Jackson kind of has defied the odds. He continued to be a good deep threat into his early 30s. He led the league in yards per reception in 2018. And that's why I really liked the Eagles adding him. And a year ago, I would have said Wentz's biggest problem was that Jackson was hurt, that he didn't have the deep threat in 2019, and that was why they just went 9-7 and barely made the playoffs. And you were hoping Jackson was going to be healthy this year to help out that offense, but that didn't happen. Jackson wasn't healthy again, and Wentz got even worse. So I would say at this point you cannot rely on Jackson at all. And if you're rostering him, you're in a really big league with a lot of teams and or a lot of players on your team.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. We didn't hear a whole lot about Russell Wilson this last week. That kind of died down real quick. But the stuff with Big Ben Roethlisberger seems to have flared up again.
It's heating up around what the Steelers are going to do at quarterback. This week, the general manager, Kevin Colbert, and the Steelers organization met with Roethlisberger. Big Ben said, "Hey, I want to play." And they've had this meeting for a few years now. And that's why I think this is newsworthy. The Steelers and Kevin Colbert have always said, "Great, we want you. We love you.
Right.
You're our quarterback."
And now the Steelers are saying, "Well, yeah, he's a guy."
Right. Yeah.
Basically.
It's basically said, I'm paraphrasing, we're evaluating our team, our situation. And then in a press conference, Kevin Colbert kind of strangely said Roethlisberger's on the roster right now, or for now. That's going to start the rumorville right away. The NFL Network analysts, I don't remember the exact analyst, but they said they didn't understand the plan here for the Steelers. And I'm going to lay out the plan. I'm not saying it's a good plan, but I'll lay out the plan here for a few minutes. They're playing a game of chicken with Big Ben. And it's either Big Ben restructure we're showing you that we're willing to move on by these comments. You're owed $40 some million. You're not worth that. We're in salary cap hell. We want to bring back Bud Dupree. We want to sign J.J. Watt. We want to bring back Juju Smith-Schuster. We want to do some of these things at least. And we got to use some of the money that's tied up to you. So you either restructure or we're going to move on. And the reason why I think some analysts are saying that's not going to work is because if they trade him, they're going to have the same problem that the Eagles have, a big amount of money tied up to Big Ben. Steelers' plan isn't to try and trade Roethlisberger. I think their plan is to basically say to him, restructure, or we're really going to try and convince you to retire. And they're not going to use any of the money that is opened up to Big Ben by Big Ben retiring or restructure. By Big Ben retiring, they're not going to use any of that extra money on a quarterback. I think the Steelers are convinced that Mason Rudolph can be at least a bridge quarterback to a place where they get into a situation where they draft somebody else. And I think
believe that.
That's why I say I don't know if this is a good plan, because I am not convinced that Mason Rudolph is the answer. Maybe the Steelers aren't convinced either, but they want to find out. And Rudolph was disastrous in 2019, and that's why I would say, that's why I would say he was not the answer. But he had another year, just practicing, watching Big Ben play, and he was the primary backup. He was never the primary backup really at all, because the year before he was the third string in 2018, and then he was going to be the backup in 2019, but then he became the starter because of Big Ben's injury. So it was his first year really of getting backup reps and watching Roethlisberger firsthand play every week. And he played well in week 17. And I think that gives the Steelers hope that he can be the answer. But as we have talked about, showing flashes doesn't mean that you're the answer at quarterback. And I would say Rudolph showed flashes in that week 17 game, but I'm not convinced that he's the long-term solution just because of that. But I believe that is the Steelers' plan. And that is probably their best approach for 2021 if they want to continue to be competitive in 2021. Try and bring back some of these other pieces and have less money tied up to quarterback.
Well, yeah, I think there are a lot of other players that need to be concentrating on. Roethlisberger, what's he going to be? He's going to be, he's 38 now.
He's going to be 39 in March.
He's going to be 39. Yeah. I think you're at a point where I don't think you can rely on him to be the man going forward. Health-wise and just the way he performed last year, it's amazing. I read somewhere else, and I wish I could remember where, but it's amazing that an 11-0 team that started the season 11-0 was a first round knockout, and it's now questionable on whether they're going to keep their quarterback. It's amazing what has happened to that team, over the last 2 or 3 months.
They got very one-dimensional, and you always say defensive coordinators figure you out. The defensive coordinators figured out the Steelers' game plan. It was all short passes, and that just did not work in December. The Steelers finished last in rushing yards per attempt and rushing yards overall, but they actually had a decent running game through the first 6 weeks. When they were 6-0, they had a at least average run game. And then it just the bottom fell out of it. They didn't want to run the ball, and when they tried, they couldn't do it. So that led to a lot of issues at quarterback. And to get the Steelers back to playing like they did in the first 2 months, they gotta run the ball, and that means I don't necessarily think 100% that Ben can't be the guy next year. He just can't be the focal point of the offense.
Right.
It's got to be, and it's the same thing for the Falcons right now. If they stick with Matt Ryan, it's got to be more of a ground game, more balance, and try and hope for more efficiency at quarterback rather than throwing it 50 times, because you're just not going to win. The Steelers they showed at the end of the season they can't win if they throw it 50 times with Ben Roethlisberger.
You're not in that era with Matt Ryan where he's going to throw the ball 4,500, 5,000 yards a season, right? And be the reason why the Falcons win 10, 11 games. That time is a little bit past. But if you give him a solid team to work with, I mean, he's a smart quarterback. He's one of the smartest quarterbacks in the league. I love Matt Ryan. I love Matt Ryan even after he did to the Bears in one of his early seasons. Kyle Orton drove the Bears down for a game-winning score with about 20 seconds left. Bears squib kicked. Ryan completed one pass deep down the sidelines, and Falcons kicked a field goal to win the game. I spent the next 4 or 5 hours well into the evening thinking that the Bears had still won that game. It was inconceivable to me that they lost it.
Yeah, I remember that game too. That was Matt Ryan. That was like Matt Ryan's first big comeback moment, I guess, in the NFL.
And I think that's been one of the great things about Ryan is he is an incredible comeback quarterback. He's smart. He knows where to go with the ball. He knows where his guys are. Put a team around him. I think he can still win. But we get back to the draft issue. You don't have anybody behind him. You're not grooming anybody. And I think with the Falcons, it's a matter of getting somebody they can groom to take his place. With the Steelers, it's more a fact of they think they have somebody groomed. There's not a lot of people who agree with them.
Right.
But they believe they have somebody groomed. Yeah.
And as a fan, you want to see just a plan, even if you don't necessarily agree with it. I'm okay with them if they're able to bring back somebody like Bud Dupree. I'm okay with them saying, all right, that means Mason Rudolph's our quarterback. And with the way Big Ben played in the second, not the second half, in December, if the Steelers have decided that, hey, Rudolph isn't that much worse, or Rudolph can do just as well, then okay, I'm okay with that decision.
Yeah, that might be the decision they make. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to see this develop as the offseason goes on. I mean, we're still about 3 weeks from the new league year, so there's going to be a lot of moves made after that happens too. Once the league year starts, but
absolutely. And we'll be covering all of it every Saturday at noon, 11 a.m. Central Time. Thanks for making us a part of your Saturday. We got to get going here. Follow us on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. I think that's a wrap, Tom.
I think it is. Have a great week, everyone.